allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This board consists of 7 members and 1 alternate who are appointed by the City Council and serve voluntarily. I am Chris Anaskevich, and I will ask the other members and the staff to introduce themselves, beginning on my left.
Mary Lau.
Mike Flannery.
Brian Barker.
Jay Damier, attorney for the board.
Gina Clayton, Planning and Development.
Michael Delp, Planning and Development.
Michael Foligno, Assistant City Attorney.
Elizabeth Vanscoy.
John Quattrocki.
Please remember to turn off your cell phones and beepers so that they do not become a distraction during the meeting. Please also refrain from having conversations in this room so that we might hear all of the testimony given today. To ensure a complete record of this board's actions, we ask that each individual wishing to speak, including the applicant, speak into the microphone at the podium in front of us. Clearly state your name and spell your last name for the clerk. Now, I will ask all those in attendance today who plan to speak to please rise and be sworn in by the clerk.
Raise your right hand, please. You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the entire truth?
Yes.
Agendas of today's meeting are on the podium to your right near the entry door. I believe that's on your left. Also on this podium are a roster of the Community Development Board, the list of city staff experts and their resumes, the board's rules of procedure, and the annual schedule of this board. Our first order of business is to review and approve the minutes from last month's meeting. May I have a motion for approval of the minutes?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. If you are here to speak on an item that is not on today's agenda, please approach the podium. Seeing no one, we will continue. Moving on to the consent agenda. This board has adopted a consent agenda format, and the consent items are identified as such on the agenda. Consent agenda items are those items for which the Planning Department recommends approval. The applicant in agreement with any proposed conditions, and no written objections to the case have been received to date. Items may be removed from the consent agenda today by a member of the board, a member of the staff, or any person in the audience for questions or objections. I will read each item on the consent agenda item, and if any person wishes to remove this item from the consent agenda, please so state or raise your hand, and we will remove it from the consent agenda. Items removed from the consent agenda will be heard in the regular order of the meeting. Items that remain on the consent agenda will be approved with a single vote. First case on the consent agenda is case FLD 2018-11028 at 10 Bay Esplanade. The owner is Sunset Green Flash, LLC. The agent is Rod Coleman at SDG Architecture. The request: the Community Development Board is reviewing a proposed roof replacement over an existing restaurant deck in the tourist district and seaward of the coastal construction control line for the property located at 10 Bay Esplanade. The project requests allowable flexibility from setback requirements and to allow new construction seaward of the coastal construction control line. Does anyone wish to remove this from the consent agenda? Okay. Case number 2 is FLD 2018-12029 at 1209 North Garden Avenue. The owner is Habitat for Humanity of Pinellas County. The agent is Ken Rush with Habitat for Humanity of Pinellas County. The request: the Community Development Board is reviewing a proposed detached dwelling in the commercial district for the property located at 1209 North Garden Avenue. The proposal includes one detached dwelling approximately 12 feet in height and requests allowable flexibility with regard to use. Does anyone wish to have this removed from the consent agenda? Seeing none. Case number 3 is FLD 2018-12030 at 1211 North Garden Avenue. The owner is Habitat for Humanity of Pinellas County. The agent is Ken Rush with Habitat for Humanity of Pinellas County. The request. The Community Development Board is reviewing a proposed detached dwelling in the commercial district for the property located at 1211 North Garden Avenue. The proposal includes one detached dwelling approximately 13 feet in height and requests allowable flexibility with regard to use. Does anyone wish to have this item removed from the consent agenda? Okay. Items number 1, 2, and 3 remain on the consent agenda. Before asking for a motion, does any board member have a disclosure of any ex parte communication related to a consent agenda item of a level 2 application? Seeing none, may I have a motion for approval of the consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve items 1 through 3 on today's consent agenda based on evidence in the record, including the application and the staff report of each one of those 3 items, and hereby adopt the findings of fact and conclusions of law stated in the staff reports with conditions of approval as listed.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We will now move on to the regular agenda. We have no case, level 2 cases, so we will move straight to level 3 cases. All level 3 cases, such as a plan amendment, rezoning, or development agreement, are considered legislative hearings. The Community Development Board reviews the application, the staff report, correspondence, and all evidence presented today and makes a recommendation to the City Council. For level 3 applications, the City Council makes the final decision. The procedure for all level 3 cases is as follows. Presentation by planning staff, 10 minutes max. Presentation by the applicant, 10 minutes max. Comments by the public, 3 minutes per person. Closing remarks by the planning staff, 3 minutes maximum. Closing remarks by applicant, 3 minutes max. Closing of the public hearing, and then the discussion and vote by the board. Our first level 3 case today is case LUP 2018-11008 at 1885 County Road 193. The owner is St. Mary and St. Minna Coptic Orthodox Church. The agent is Natef A. Hana. The request. The Community Development Board is reviewing a request to amend the future land use map designation from residential low to institutional and making a recommendation to City Council. I will now hand it over for the presentation by staff.
Thank you. Connor Brotherton, Planning and Development. So this case involves a 2.61 acre property, which is located on the east side of County Road 193, approximately 520 feet south of Sunset Point Road.
Introduce yourself for the record, please.
Yes, Connor Brotherton, Planning and Development. A single-family home, which was constructed in 1973, occupies the site. The current owner, St. Mary and St. Minna Coptic Orthodox Church, which is located on the parcel to the south, 2930 County Road 193, purchased this property in June of 2015. The church's campus is comprised of 4 buildings with just over 30,000 square feet of development on 4.47 acres. The city annexed the church's main property into the city in 2014 as it was located in the area where the Public Utilities was expanding sanitary sewer service at the time. The city's Community Development Code does not permit places of worship in its residential zoning districts. So the church applied for a change in the property's future land use and zoning atlas designations to institutional in the city of Clearwater to remain a conforming use after annexation, which City Council approved. At that time, the church did not indicate that they had any plans for expansion. In early 2018, the applicant contacted staff because the church would like to create a master plan to include the addition of the subject property, which is the parcel to the north of the main campus, addressing the traffic circulation for the church campus. It is unknown if any new buildings are intended to be constructed, as no site plan has been submitted at this time. The request is to change the future land use map designation of the subject property from residential low to institutional. A request to rezone the property from the low-medium density residential district to the institutional district is being processed concurrently with this case, and that is case REZ 2018-12005. There is a mix of residential and institutional uses in the area. To the south is the existing church campus, and abutting to the north is a single-family house, and to the north and east are single-family subdivisions. The properties to the west are owned by Sylvan Abbey Memorial Park and are developed with a single-family home, a place of worship, and a funeral home. Further south across County Road 193 is the Paul B. Stevens Exceptional Student Educational Center. CR 193 is a two-lane undivided road which lacks sidewalks. It terminates at a private driveway for a 2.6-acre single-family lot, which is still in Pinellas County. The neighborhood abutting the subject property to the east contains two cul-de-sacs with no through access to Sunset Point Road. As detailed in the staff report, staff is concerned that the expansion of the institutional future land use designation could allow for additional development that is out of character or could have negative impacts in this area. The proposed expansion is therefore inconsistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the Clearwater Comprehensive Plan and conflicts with said plan as indicated in the detailed goals, objective, and policy in the staff report. As detailed in the staff report as well, the future land use map amendment would require an amendment to the countywide plan map category from residential low medium to the public semi-public category. Although the proposed amendment is consistent with the purpose of the proposed category in the countywide rules, the expansion of this designation onto the subject property is inconsistent with the character and scale relative to the surrounding uses, transportation facilities, and natural resource features. The proposed expansion of the institutional future land use category will further erode the low-density residential character of the area. The addition of institutional property is incompatible with surrounding uses and inconsistent with the character of the surrounding properties and neighborhood. Based upon the findings of fact as detailed in the staff report, the proposed expansion would increase the demand on several of the public facilities when compared to the existing residential development. However, it is determined that the proposed change would not result in the degradation of existing levels of service for potable water, sanitary sewer, solid waste, parkland, and stormwater management. Degradation to the level of service of CR 193, being a two-lane undivided road and a dead-end roadway, could occur with this proposed amendment. There are no wetlands or no wetlands appear to be on the subject property. Therefore, it is determined that the proposed future land use map amendment would not negatively impact natural resources on the subject property. And Planning and Development staff recommends denial of the future land use map amendment from residential low to institutional.
Any questions of planning staff? We will now move on to the presentation by the applicant.
Good afternoon. My name is Atef Hana. I am the professional engineer and the applicant with the owner as well. Father Mina Gali, G-H-A-L-Y. I would like to include an exhibit with this meeting, if I can.
Okay.
First of all, I appreciate the city's help with us, and Kyle has done a wonderful job. Very good analysis, and I just need to present some facts that the congregation will not exceed the number because it's limited to the chapel itself. What's going to happen if we are to add a building, that will be a service building. It's not going to be, it's for the same number of people that has been attending the church. As you can see, we have a conceptual site plan that I wanted to show you. As you can see, it's not shown on this plan, but Sunset is to the top of the page, east-west. And that entrance to the complex, if we are including the parcel here, is going to be the north entrance, which we are proposing. It shows a two-way entry, but I'll change that to an ingress only, and consider the egress actually using the other two access points on the east-west run of County Road 193. So it is in the report that it says we have an additional 67 trips. It's not going to create the 67 trips. Same number of trips is going to be consistent. The intention is to improve the situation. As we are now, we have parking problems within the site, and we need to contain the parking within the site. We have an agreement with the school across the road to the south. We have a parking agreement on Sundays to use the school, and during the days, the school actually uses the church parking. So we want to contain the traffic within the circulation and the traffic within site. No additional impact, it's just about improvements, that's all. For the rezoning and the future land use, we are asking for the institutional, which is really going to be contiguous to institutional. We're not creating a pocket. It's just contiguous. Again, also the church, because we cannot expand beyond the chapel, you can see the chapel at the southwest corner. It's limited, and we cannot increase the number. So the church recently actually created two new churches, one in Largo and one in Palm Harbor, on a temporary basis. And we are using the services on Saturdays for the congregation. So because we cannot accommodate the number, so we try to do it that way. And Father Mina can actually talk about that.
Generally, it's not, as a church, we don't like big, large family churches because it's easier to better serve when you have a smaller amount of people. So because of the growth in the last 5 years, because a lot of immigration coming from Egypt, from the Christian community to here, what we're doing, fortunately in Florida, we're seeing that it's a lot cheaper than you have up north, so a lot more people are moving down here. But with that, we're trying to expand also in other areas. We would like to limit our congregation numbers to no more than 200, 250 families. We have grown in the last few years faster than what any one of us would have expected. So we've opened 2 churches, and they are registered in the state. For St. Philip Peter Mercurius Coptic Orthodox Church, this will be in Palm Harbor. And St. Shanuta Coptic Orthodox Church, this is in Largo. So we're trying to address all the families, and then this among the other 3 churches in the Tampa Bay area that we have. One out in Newport Richey and 2 in Tampa. So our goal is not to just add another chapel or just because of the numbers are growing, but just to add more service to the current community that we have.
With this, we're open to any questions.
I have a question, Mr. Hanna. Has staff been provided this site plan you provided to us prior to this meeting?
I did provide this much earlier, but it was not required as part of the submittal. But I did provide it early.
Okay. But staff was still concerned that you did not have, they at least mentioned to you they had concerns that they don't understand how the project would move forward. Staff recommendation was you need to contact the neighbors. You need to come up with a conceptual plan and then approach all the neighbors and get a general consensus of what they want to accept or not. And we did prepare that. We passed it to the planning staff. And at the same time, we were trying to get together with the neighbors on a one-on-one and present that plan. Okay. Did you do that? Did you meet with many of the neighbors?
We have been meeting with the neighbors. If you can, Amir, if you can come in and chip on this. Mention your name, please.
My name is Amir Malak, M-A-L-A-K. I'm one of the board members.
Sorry, would you start again?
My name is Amir Malak, M-A-L-A-K.
Okay.
And one of the board members in the church.
Okay.
So you was talking about.
How did you deal with the neighbors on this?
Oh, we actually met with them maybe a month ago, and we visited them during the holidays, and we approached them and they actually appreciate that we contain the kids in the church. Some of them said, "You guys very good to keep the kids instead of the street, keep them in the church." We invite them to come to us. Not all of them came, but actually we have built a good relationship for the past 2 years. since I became a board member. We visit them regularly. They know us, and we have a very good relationship, and we didn't get any opposed from them that they're going to be denied anything.
Okay, so there was no expressed concern?
Nobody said anything to us face-to-face to say any concern for them.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Did you show this to them?
No, we didn't share that with them. We need to make sure
A
we
lot of the
can.
questions we got were, they don't know what you're planning, and I think that's why.
I was planning to have an open house, probably, and bring them in and have them look at this plan. That's one of the plans. But without actually going through the rezone and future land use change, everything is dead. We cannot even pursue that.
Because we weren't provided with this
I
either
know.
until today, so
Sure.
it makes it difficult to.
Question. So I just want to clarify, the service building is existing,
The service building between the two buildings exists.
and the church building and
The
the chapel
chapel
are
and the
existing.
service building. The only new is the north building.
And if I'm looking at a 28,000 square foot, two-story building, do we have a proposed use for that building at this time?
It's a service building. I'm not sure what's
We
gonna.
want to expect, what we have currently in the service building are Sunday school classes and like a dining hall. But one of the things that we want to kind of pay attention more for our youth is to do more of a sports type building, something to keep the kids occupied and active. This is one of our, when we discuss with the board what we'd like to do, we want to be more youth oriented. And we do, yes, have the outside basketball court, but being in Florida, it's just much hot and humid. So, and at the same time, we're trying to stay good with the neighbors, not to have the youth out very late, where then they're going to complain about noise. So if we can keep them indoors, this I think would not only help us, even the neighbors themselves.
And the site plan itself, we try to have a buffer actually between the crowd and the neighbors by buffering, by the parking lot being in that configuration. Also, we try to create like a seating area between the two buildings, and so everything is contained. Right now, there's traffic actually between the two buildings, and so we're closing that to have some more kind of the two buildings are nicely served together in an outdoor fashion.
I see. Okay. Planning staff will be speaking again, but seeing the site plan, I sort of wonder if they would change their recommendation. Right now, their recommendation is denial, and it sounded like a lot of that was based on the fact that there was no site plan. They didn't understand what was being planned. I'm not sure they would turn that today. They probably need time to digest what you have here. But again, they will be speaking shortly.
I mean, we will be glad to have just even a consideration of approval with conditions. If they don't like something on the site plan, we can work with the planning. Definitely.
Okay.
Same general questions. Is essentially what we're asked to do is change the zoning, and this could be any other plan when we're done. You could do anything you want, and it sounds like it could be a storage building, and you could be put rice in there. You could put 200 students in there. I mean, just by what we're doing today, and the building may not be there, it could be anywhere. And the big concerns that when I was out there, I looked at that access, and as the school's already there. And if you had a school, which is carte blanche, you could do that. There's no reason to say, you approved to change the zoning. You could put a school in with as many students as you could put in parking, and you could probably put in double parking. I'm just saying we're opening up the sky without knowing what we're doing. And I think that that's why we have a planning department to take a look at these things before it happens. I mean, already you may have two schools coming in and out. What you say here today, I'm sorry, I've been around in development a long time, and I've been through a lot of plans, a lot of people that change as soon as the zoning's changed, it becomes something entirely different. So if those that can be resolved, it's a nice spot for a lot of what you're doing, and I would like to see, I wouldn't mind that, but I'd like to have the planning department have a chance to look at it and digest what you're, and put limitations on it so that the people can get in and out of the onto the highway. The road is worked up correctly. And many other factors that have to go into it. So I'm just saying, I think to me, it's a little bit early. That's all.
It is early, that's why it was not, we did not want to submit something like this early, but what we intend to do, even if we have restriction on the use, it's fine too. It's a church, and we're not going to change that use anyway. But some drainage problems exist along the site, and we want to address part of the improvements as well.
What is the basketball court for?
The current basketball is an outdoor basketball.
Who uses that?
The kids.
From what kids?
For all the youth,
For
from
the
5
youth.
years
From
old
your,
to
from
30 years
From the
old.
congregation.
so you already
Oh,
have,
for our, yeah.
and you already have a school there.
It's not a school, it's a Sunday school.
Only on first,
Only on
only on
Sunday.
first day do you do
It's
that.
only Sundays.
It's Sunday school, not school.
Could you
Not
have,
a school.
could you have a school?
Not a rec.
No, we
No,
don't have
no school.
We don't have school.
No.
Why not?
We didn't think about it, we think what we need.
I mean, I would if I had the beautiful spot.
Okay, approved.
Nice spot. I'd be tempted to put a school in there.
Okay.
You already have a basketball court. Anyway, I'm just saying, I'm trying to figure out what's happening and what could happen. And I just feel more comfortable if I knew those parameters that were worked out so that things, and if they could be worked out.
We're just trying to work with the city, especially we know the traffic, and we know it's a one-way entry, one-way out of Sunset Point, and we don't want to create any additional impact. We're trying to work with planning on that. So even a school, I'm not sure we can do that with the situation that we have now. Unless this, I mean, it's still one way to Sunset Point. We understand that.
Any further questions from the board? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any comments from the public? Please approach the podium and state your name.
I need to be sworn in.
Yes.
I got here.
Okay.
Swear affirm the testimony you're about to give is the entire truth.
Yes.
Kevin Hunsaker, 2939 Sunrise Drive. We are the neighborhood that's right on Sunset, Hunsicker. Hunsaker, is that what you're asking?
H-U-N-S.
I-C-K-E-R, Hunsaker.
Thank you.
We're the neighborhood that is immediately on 193 and Sunset Point. A couple false statements. We protested and resisted the city 2 years ago on this expansion. And as we see now, they're already growing. My home sits at the back side, which is my backyard faces their back where they have the basketball. The noise is horrendous. The kids in the summer play till 10 to 10:30. They've put lights up now that blinds into our neighborhood. And it's like, it is a massive traffic problem. The folks are extremely rude to let us out or even trying to come out. It is now wanting to add even more buildings. And just what we feared was that they would want to propose a 2-story, 3-story, and I think, if I'm correct, institutional will allow them up to an 8-story building. And so our fear is just what they're saying. Well, we hope that we don't, but they might. And just what you do is the city is going to change the zone, and we protested before. We had 100%, both the neighborhood that they're next to, Castle Oaks, and Sunset Point, and yet the city allowed this, and they have taken advantage of it. They keep the church property very nice, but the expansion that we fear is going to degrade our property value, and the next thing they're going to do is they're going to want to buy Ark out, and then we're going to have them right in our backyard. This congregation continually grows, and it's become more of an issue to us. I will be presenting to the city a 100% signature notarized, because all they did was notify the 6 houses on the one side of the neighborhood. We are a walled community of 12. That's 12 that I will have. I will have the Castle Oaks neighborhoods signed, notarized signatures, that we do not want this growth. We bought back in there as a nice little private residential enclave. And now it's turning into more of what will go institutional, which will then turn into commercial. I deal with the city and the permitting and planning department all the time. I'm actually the guy that designed your obelisk and built it out on Courtney Campbell. So I fear what can happen by opening up the ability to change this. If they didn't want to move into a residential neighborhood, they should not have built their church there. We have rights as residential to maintain residential neighborhood. We have rights to our protection of our property. The city has to protect those rights. The road can't handle it. 193 cannot handle any more traffic. And that's where we're at. And y'all are welcome to come out, sit in my backyard, and you'll hear the difference. They may want to say that they're very quiet and they only have Sunday school, but I can tell you they get very aggressive in their play, and I like that they have their church congregation. But it's more than the congregation that shows up to some of these basketballs. Please take that into consideration. There's other neighbors that would like to speak with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public who wishes to speak, please approach the podium.
Hi, if I believe you like this morning.
Yes.
Do you swear from the testimony you're about to give us the entire truth?
I do.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name for us?
Russell Crane, C-R-A-N-E. I live at 1869 Council Woods Drive. I represent the subdivision that's to the east of the church. The previous speaker talked about how loud the basketball is. It is very loud. It's happy sound, so I'm not completely against that. But I don't live right next to it like he does, so maybe I'm not as sensitive to it. Our main concern is that before this hearing, we didn't have any idea what was going to go on. And right now, I don't believe the plans are formalized. I mean, I was trying to hear what was going on, and I think he wants to use it for parking. Does that mean he's going to tear down the house that's there? Or is he going to put up something new? I heard some 3-story building. But anyway, at this point, I would really like to have a concrete idea of what's going in there. The church is good folks. I don't really have anything against them. They're loud. There's a lot of parking. They need more parking, obviously, so if that's what they're going to use it for, then I'm all for that. But if they're going to build anything or do other things like that, we certainly want to know that ahead of schedule.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else from the public who wishes to speak, please approach the podium. You need to be sworn in as
Yes,
well?
sir.
Okay.
Okay. Do you swear from the testimony you're about to give us the entire truth?
I do. My name is Stacy Bolin. I live at 2933 Sunrise Drive, and it's B as in boy, O-L-E-N. And I just want to say this is my first meeting of this kind, and I live next door to Kevin Hunsicker, Kevin and Rachel. I'm fairly new to Florida from Colorado. And while I appreciate the church's need and desire to grow and expand, and I think that that's a good thing, my overall concern is, from what I understand, is once it's rezoned into a different category, we don't necessarily have control or an idea today of what that could turn into in the future. And so as a homeowner, of course, I'm concerned as to, while the idea of perhaps just parking sounds reasonable in that area, that it would turn into and morph into something else. And I echo what Mr. Hunsicker previously stated, that the noise isn't just on Sundays. And I love the sound of kids too. It is a happy noise. But it isn't just contained to Sundays. It is throughout the week. I'm home most days. And I don't mind the noise, but the lighting has changed over the 2 years that I've lived there, and it's more of a spotlight. And so my concern, again, I would say, is just, from what I understand, once we take that next step and turn this into a different zoning, is that it can morph into something that we didn't intend, one of those unintended consequences. And so I'm just concerned as a homeowner and a new resident of Clearwater. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public who wishes to speak? Okay, we will now move on to closing remarks by the planning staff.
Thank you. So that site plan that was presented to you today was, and it is a conceptual site plan. Staff has not reviewed it in any sort of formal capacity. And again, being conceptual, you know, they could show something today, but it could change tomorrow. Staff is really concerned generally with the traffic, being there's no through connection to Sunset Point Road, which is a larger, you know, minor arterial roadway, with the other rights-of-way constraints being a narrow 2-lane undivided roadway. And just so you know, we cannot condition uses at this stage. We cannot do that for land use amendments or zoning atlas amendments. That's all I have right now. Another thing that we do have is with this expansion to institutional, both of these properties would total just about 7 acres of land, actually just over 7 acres of land. Being 7 acres of institutional land brings a lot of development potential, 0.65 FAR, which is actually an increase from 0.40. So that development potential greatly increases across the site. And staff is concerned, you know, with that increase in development potential along, you know, with the uses. It could come with the institutional zoning. And the biggest one, again, is the fact that there is no through connection to Sunset Point Road. It's a dead-end way. I don't know if Michael or Gina have anything else to add, but those are our concerns as well.
I have one question. Is it possible that having a conceptual site plan could change the current recommendation from denial? I know when it happened today, but is it possible that could change if staff were able to digest this and apply conditions, or do you feel strongly at this point?
At this point, we feel strongly against the change to institutional.
Okay.
Yes.
With or without a site plan?
Without a site
more
plan.
time.
Or formalized site plan, correct, yeah.
When I look at the overall site plan, in the back of this lot, there's another lot that is long and the same size as this lot, which has one house on it. And I'm trying to figure out, it's probably beyond where we are now, but that's okay for me. How is that next lot developed? It sounds like if this lot's changed in zoning, the one behind it is sort of automatically going to have to be changed in zoning too, to be useful, or be either that or you put a long skinny road down that one. You can't sort of use that other property behind it. So it sounds like this is step one to step two to have a larger parcel. Now maybe I'm naive, but that's what I'm thinking.
Would you be talking about the parcel to the north of
to the north?
Currently it does have a single family home on it, so there's just one dwelling unit on there. And again, it is another large site. It's probably about the same size as this one. So I can't speculate into the future, but yeah, that's what it is currently, the single family home.
Any other questions?
Just so the applicant has the benefit, I know you just said it already, but you don't think them coming in with the site plan, sitting down with staff and putting, you mentioned you can't condition a use on the rezoning, but can't you attach a site plan to it? You can't do that either? I see Ellen shaking her head.
We don't have a regulatory authority to require a site plan attached to the rezoning and land use. We used to few years ago. It was a result of the business task force changes that we made. We eliminated that. I think frankly, sometimes it might be beneficial to rethink it again because of the uncertainty. But I think, you know, in this case, I would go back to, we talked about this really a fair amount internally. You know, and I think we're oftentimes try to be very accommodating at places of worship where we have them in the community. And our concern here is that, and Kyle touched on this, lack of direct access to an arterial when we're getting upwards of 300 parking spaces, and you know, several tens of thousands of square feet of facilities. And frankly, the development potential is much greater, and Kyle touched on that. So we would not want to, on one hand, establish a lot of entitlements that we're not comfortable with, and then on the other hand, say in the future, well, gee, that's too much because you're isolated in the community and don't have access to major arterials and that sort of thing. So it can be an internal conflict for us to decide, how do we try to prioritize that? And in this particular case, creating that amount of entitlement and uses back there where we really don't have good access to a major roadway, I think was a deciding factor. And now we present that for you and your considerations.
I know we don't like to talk about hypotheticals, but you mentioned direct access and they mentioned parking issues. Just to say if they came in to get a permit, not proposing a new building, but they wanted to improve access, circulation, and parking on their site. Is that something that would be allowed under their current zoning designation?
On their site?
Yes.
Sure, it would.
Okay.
Their site is currently zoned institutional.
Okay, maybe I worded that incorrectly. On the additional parcels that are not zoned institutional.
They could do parking through a level 2. They'd have to come back to the board and ask to use it for parking.
Okay.
But no building.
Gotcha, thank you. Because I think, what Mr. Hanna indicated was obviously they don't want to spend a bunch of money in engineering fees and design fees and then it doesn't happen, but it sounds like if the staff wouldn't support it and the board wouldn't support it, even though they went through that motion, it sounds like that could be another avenue for them to at least improve their site. So that's what I was getting at.
Right. Yeah. And this is one of the things look at it, institutional's already there in the area there and the school to the south of it as well too, and the expansion side of it, I hear it. And what Mike's touching on, it's come up before, and maybe we need to review back into a planned development zoning for another term, where it's tied to a site plan versus Euclidean rezoning, where it's opened up to everything that's there. So I don't know if that's something, as you were talking about, we had before, but I mean, I could see more uses of that coming about, where if this was limited to the amount of square footage that they could put on it and all those types of things, which other communities, Hillsborough has, and things of that nature that we might look at. But this is where we are now.
Any other comments? Okay, thank you. Next up is closing remarks by applicant.
Thank you again, everybody, for listening us today. Thank you for your supportive for a place of worship. Regarding it is, again, I mean, that's a conceptual plan. It's not a final plan. And we are willing to actually reduce it to an acceptable plan. It's just, and again, it's having that additional parcel to the north creates the circulation within the church to be more efficient. Right now, it's very limited. We don't want to create the impact that they are talking about. That's why I'm going to say again, we are not proposing a use that will be detrimental to what's happening today. We understand it. Like if we have another building, like Father Mina mentioned, that will be a basketball court inside. So that will probably help us with the noise that they complain about. But it's all conceptual at this point. We are willing to work with the planners and the city to come up, and also the neighbors, to come up with something that everybody's comfortable with. That's where we are today.
Thank you.
One other thing, if I want to add, because it's speaking about the traffic-wise, the neighborhood, they came today and they asked about something. They actually didn't come back with that traffic at all. They are on the other side. So the planning from the city, they concerned about the traffic trips. Now we're talking about different thing. The traffic is not come back to all these houses. The houses, we talk about the 17 houses, they actually go through the 193. All of them actually was in agreement with us and they have a very good reputation with us. And if one or two, they have a problem, I understand that and we hear them. And that's why we try to contain all the noises indoor instead of making that. And the sound, like they said, we try to keep the street, the kids from the street, to try to get them in the church. We try to help the community. If any from the neighborhood want to bring their kids, we welcome them. So we try actually to make it indoor. We try to contain the noise. We try to contain the eliminate, even the light-wise. We didn't increase any light for the past 5 years, and we can prove that. If you give me one light we added for the past 3 years, I would say yes, we added. We didn't add any. Actually, in the Christmas and Easter, we normally bring a portable lights for people to park in the street, but during that time, if we have light, we're not going to bring this. We try to work with the, and like we said, we can do anything just to use that in a good way with the neighborhood as well, just as I used, and we can modify any plan we have.
Thank you.
He's good.
Mike?
Chairman, if I may, one of the things, just looking at their site plan here, is that, and I don't know whether the church would want to consider this, or would they want to broach it with their neighbors, but, for example, if you were to take the proposed building, use their existing entitlements through the existing zoning, and move the building over to where the basketball court is now, you know, they could use their current entitlements without adding that to that in the community through a zoning change. They could potentially apply for the level 2 to park on the, you know, I would suggest what would be the western part of that property away from the residential community. You know, it might take some of that outdoor noise and the impact of that and move it indoors where it would be less impactful on the neighborhood. And I would point out that a 2-story building, you can actually build single-family homes 30, 35 feet tall. So, you know, there's not a lot of potential height differential there in a 2-story building, particularly if they design it attractively. So there may be some options for them, depending upon how that would meet their needs, and it might be something that they could at least engage the community in a conversation about whether it might, you know, mitigate some of the existing, you know, noise issues if they're having that. So that's just a suggestion of you know, something that, you know, the applicants they could consider if they wanted to.
Okay.
It might present us a different scenario.
Thank you, Mr. Riddell. I wanted to make sure the applicant heard that and understood that. They have indicated yes for the record.
At the proper point, I'd like to ask just a question from the planning department. It's a good spot to do that.
Sure.
I'd like to, just so I understand the process, at some point, when did the church, and I'm going to take it to Paul B. Stevens, both of those, get the zoning to be institutional? The history of the city and the land, I mean, it seems, was it grandfathered in? Is it when we started everything? Was this parcel that the church is on always commercial, institutional? When did that change? When did the school chart? I'm not leaving them out of the other side.
I don't know that I can address the school per se unless some of the other staff are aware of that, but I will say with regard to the place of worship, the controversy that the gentleman mentioned from the neighborhood had to do with the city's annexation of the property. The church was pre-existing in Pinellas County, and in Pinellas County, churches are allowed in residential zoning districts. So in Clearwater, they're not. In Clearwater, we have houses of worship located in institutional districts. So when we annexed the property, we had to transition from, we did not want to leave the church non-conforming, because they weren't non-conforming in Pinellas County. So when we annexed them, we moved them from Pinellas County residential, where they were conforming, to the city of Clearwater institutional where they were conforming. And so that was what generated the conflict with the community at that time. The pastor or his representative may be able to tell you, in fact, how long the church has been there in the neighborhood. That I do not know the answer to. If you could come to this.
The church built in 1997.
1990s.
1997.
And I think the annexation was in 2014, that was in your report.
Okay.
So the church use was already existing.
Right.
Chairman, can I have a clarification, just for your board's knowledge?
I think that's fine. Sure.
The property between us is...
Please state your name again.
Kevin Hunsaker, the property between us is U Park or ARC now. So that has a conditional residential use. That's how it's zoned.
Okay.
Which they could do on that next house, which has a conditional residential use without changing it.
Okay, thank you. We are now closing, this is the closing of the public hearing, and we will now have the discussion and vote by the board.
There seems to be a lot of unknowns, also a lot of options, which makes me confused about, I mean, do we have to make a decision today, or could they work with staff and bring this back to the board? That's a question.
Yes, if they, we threw out one scenario. If they were to follow that route, ultimately the provision of parking on the parcel to the north would come back to you as a level 2 approval. And there would be another hearing, public hearing on that.
And I also heard that there are options for building on the current property, not the proposed property.
That's correct.
Right. There's a lot of different
development potential on the existing piece.
Okay. Must we make a decision to recommend today, or no?
You could vote to continue it to a date certain to give us an opportunity to work with them on possible solutions and then see where it goes. And either they could come back or withdraw as may or may not be necessary.
Let me know before it's benefits, though, you don't have a request from the applicant for a continuance. Right? So until that's made, they have a due process right to have this hearing concluded one way or the other.
Okay.
But if I understand correctly, with respect to the land use designation change, staff is not going to change their position with that. There may be other options for the applicant, but today we're discussing.
Based on the facts as we know them, we believe we are making the correct recommendation in this case.
Right. So staff will continue to deny that request to change the land use designation.
I think Mr. Delk made a great suggestion. I think if the site plan was submitted as part of the application, that probably would have happened already, the dialogue between staff and the applicant. I think if the applicant wants to request a continuance, I think, in my opinion, that's a good way to go and allow them to at least have the dialogue before we vote on anything, deny their request. That's my personal opinion. I haven't heard anything from them.
Can we ask, would you be willing to continue?
Jeff Hain again. We would like the continuous. We like the idea of getting with the staff and getting the options. And then we go from here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments? Do we have a motion?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think based upon the applicant's request and some of the comments by the board, I will make a motion to grant a continuance of consideration of this zoning request and the tenant land use request. And I'm uncertain as to whether it be a date certain, such as next month's meeting, or whether it's better to keep it open-ended to allow for discussions with staff.
Can we set a date uncertain?
You can, unless city staff has some objections to that. Now, a continued hearing would need to be advertised in the same manner as this original hearing, so there wouldn't be any prejudice attending a continuance. And I think you'd have a hard time even selecting a date certain at this juncture because you don't know when the submission would be made. You don't know on what time frame the staff would review and analyze that submission. So no, you do not need to pick a date certain at this juncture. You could continue it until it comes back before the board.
That would be my motion to leave it open-ended.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
Like that's something to say.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have something to add, Michael? Mr. Dell?
I was just going to add that with the date uncertain, I will encourage the applicant to go talk about different scenarios with neighborhoods so that we can get their sense of comfort level with some revisions. So I'd like to afford them time to do that.
Understood. Thank you. We have a motion that's been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Our next level 3 case is case REZ 2018-12005-1885, County Road 193. The owner is St. Mary and St. Minna Coptic Orthodox Church. The Community Development Board is reviewing a request to amend the zoning atlas designation from the low medium density residential district to the institutional district and making a recommendation to City Council.
Mr. Vice Chair, these applications are traveling together. I would suggest to you that since you continued one, that they travel together through this process.
Okay.
Yeah,
I wasn't sure.
I couldn't.
Yeah, I didn't word it the most artful way possible, but I did mention that it was for both the land use change and the rezoning application.
Okay. Now that was the motion, and that was the second, that was the vote, so you are done with your agenda items then.
Okay, very well. Does the planning director have any other items for discussion today?
No, sir.
Okay. This board is adjourned at 1:56. Thank you.
Another 2 minutes.